And finally, identity theft. You will eventually have an applicant who says, that criminal record's not me, there's no way. And you smile and say, okay, sure. Well, 99.9% of the time, they're lying to you. It is them. If you've got a good screening company, if you've got a really good screening partner, and they're verifying their records and they've done their due diligence, overwhelming majority of the time, that really is, that record really does belong to them. But here's a case where it wasn't, and something that we actually worked in our office. We had an applicant come through with one of the most unique names you've ever heard. It's like, it was, you know, this isn't the name, but like, it was like Cornelius Leadbottom, you know, Xavier Smith. I mean, it was just a crazy name that was not going to be, there were not going to be a lot of those running around the country with the same date of birth. This guy was a social worker with a long history in Fort Worth. He'd always been in Fort Worth. We verified every minute of his employment. There were no gaps of employment for the last 15 years. One of my analysts came in my office and said, we got a problem. The national database is showing a record for this guy out of Berkeley, South Carolina, and we verified it. It's really got his name and date of birth on it. And also down in Navarro County, he's got a record. And so there's something wrong here, because we verified all his employment. He served jail time in South Carolina, and he was on probation in Navarro, and he completed his probation. And but he's always been in Tarrant County. He's never, I mean, there's a disconnect here. So we ordered the case files from both those places and actually called the sheriff's office in Berkeley, South Carolina, and they emailed me his mugshot. So I called my client and say, tell me about Cornelius. Tell me about, you know, and he says, well, you know, he's a great social worker. He's got, you know, a great reputation in the industry. And I'm like, yeah, we saw that. Well, describe him physically for me. Oh, he's 6'3", he's a black guy. You know, starts telling me, I'm like, okay, we got a problem, because this is not a 6'3" black guy. Okay, this guy's, you know, that's 60 inches right there. I mean, you know, this is not the right guy. And so we got all the records out of the courts there, and he had two different socials in the two different court files, and one had never been issued, and one belonged to a woman. He'd used the same name and date of birth in both instances, though. And we finally figured out what had happened is this guy stole the other guy's identity the first time and got fingerprinted against it. And now every time this joker gets arrested, those fingerprints come up and they tag it to this other guy's identity. And so now my client's new hire, who's you know, completely innocent of anything here, is carrying around a letter from a state district judge out of Navarro County saying this is not the guy, in case something else comes up. And he's trying to slowly get it worked out, but it's a real ordeal to get these things worked out. They changed the law several years ago to make it a little easier, but it's a lot of time and it's a lot of sweat, because you can imagine when you call the court and say, hey, you're reporting records on me that aren't me, what's the court going to say? You know, so there's a hairy process for them to go through. But so it is possible. So anytime an applicant comes to you and says that's not me, or wants to dispute anything in their employment background check, you go ahead and just say, I can't talk to you about that because I'm not the expert. I have to rely on my screening partner and refer them to your background screening partner, and they should. Once that person disputes that information under the law, under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, I have 30 days to reinvestigate what we reported and verify it's accurate. If we find that it's not accurate, it can be corrected immediately. But in reality, in our organization, that's our big. If we ever get a consumer dispute, which is extremely rare, but if we ever get one, our biggest priority in the office is getting that worked out right away, so our client doesn't lose an applicant, and the applicant doesn't lose a job. And you know, if there's an error, most of the disputes we get, to be honest, are employment related. Previous employer told the applicant, we'll give you a neutral reference, but when we call, the manager or somebody will tell us, oh no, he's not eligible for rehire. And then they go back and forth and talk about it, and the employer changes their tune when we call to re-verify it. And that's fine. That's what, you know, I played that game when I was in HR too. So, but that's just the reality of, you know, those are the kind of disputes we see where we actually change data. To save trees, I didn't print 65 or 70 copies of all this, but you've got my card on the table, and if you have questions that we don't get to answer today, give me a call, or you can email or call me, and I'd be glad to email you the presentation. Are there any questions I can answer for you? Yes, ma'am.
Does your system, does it allow you, so like if you run a criminal background check, does it, if one comes up, does it allow you to provide you a link to where you can go and pull up the photo?
No, the overwhelming majority of mugshots aren't available. Now you're talking about most state sex offender registries do have those, and my system, what we do is when we verify, because mostly where you see that are instant background checks where you go in and put in the name and it spits out a record immediately. And we don't do that. If there's a record, we go verify it. We don't trust the sex offender registries. We don't trust the state's databases or the national. So if we verified the information, we will we'll go get that verification. If the state sex offender registry, for instance, does have a photo, we'll include that photo with our report after we verified that all the identifiers really match, that this is really your applicant that we're reporting it on. Any other questions I can answer for anybody? Yes, ma'am.
You don't get the date of birth until the day they begin employment on the when you have it for the I-9. So
yeah.
Run the background checks.
The question was, how do you run the background check without a date of birth? And to be honest, to do it right, you've got to have the date of birth. That's another value of having that consumer report disclosure form, that separate document, because you can have them where they put their name and date of birth and that information on that. And what I recommend my clients do is, as soon as that application is turned in, those documents get separated. That disclosure and authorization document goes a different direction than the employment application, and it goes in a file, and you treat it as confidential information because it's also got the social on it, and you treat it as confidential information locked away until you're ready to do the background check. And that way you can do your background when you have the information you need, but you don't have to worry about any age discrimination claims from it being on the application and the information traveling around. Now, I talk to people from time to time and say it's illegal for us to ask for the date of birth pre-hire, pre-offer, and that's just not accurate. I mean, your concern there is it's an EEOC concern. It's a discrimination concern, and you want to make sure that you have procedures in place to make sure you're not freely distributing that applicant's age and it's not under consideration. But you can certainly obtain it for a valid reason, including the background check. Yes, ma'am.
I'm in healthcare, and we are regulated and have certain penal codes that people cannot work for us if they have an offense that falls under that penal code.
Right.
And we've had conflicting information. Our old background company would provide the penal code on the reports, but the new background company says that they cannot do that because penal codes are always changing. So what can you expect from a background company and what is not reasonable to expect?
Whatever you can negotiate with them. Certainly, it sounds like you've got a background screening company who doesn't want the liability of misquoting the law, which is probably understandable. But at the same time, I don't know why you changed background check companies, and maybe it was a cost issue, and maybe you're getting a little less service for what you're paying now, and that could be it. But I can see where it would be for those, depending on how their system's set up, it could be a headache for them to remember to do that consistently and accurately. So that may be what it is. But a good screening partner will customize whatever they do for you. I mean, we've got some crazy things we do for some clients just to, so they sleep better at night, and we do that. But there's always a premium involved with it, with something that's got more expense or time associated with it. Any other questions I can answer for any of you? How many of you think you're doing a really good background check now? Some of you, good. Well, my card, like I say, is on the table, so feel free to shoot me an email if you'd like a copy of the presentation. Also, we're having this presentation today videoed, and we're going to have it on our website as well. So if any of you are on the run, let me know, and I'll make sure we edit your face out before we put it on the internet. But I appreciate it. Feel free to call me if I can answer any questions for you. Thanks a lot.